had the thought of just screaming response as soon as you said call, but then thought against it.
This episode's going well so far.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hello, welcome to another zany episode of Dirty West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We're here to train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive experience in training in both partnered and solo dancing. Cassie has about 21 years. I have about 23. Tonight, we are looking at call and response. We're looking at Maxime and Brandi from Boogie 2017.
Yep, the link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch. When you're done, we'll get to analyzing. I will say, if whenever like NSYNC or Backstreet Boys comes on and I'm competing, I am equally as thrilled and excited.
That's fair.
Yeah, yeah. Aaron says, I can't get over Maxime smiling the entire time. Same.
Very excited about
it. Before we move over to the screen share, just do like brief preview of call and response. And that's just the idea that partner A does something, partner B responds to it either by like doing the same thing or adding to it. And then oftentimes it escalates further and then the partnership does something together that comes from that call and response. So it's a really fun way of treating musicality and playfulness in West Coast Swing because it allows you to have a conversation back and forth with your partner instead of like a dictatorship from one partner to the other.
Great explanation.
Sometimes as a follow, you just want to zone out and be told what to do. Like that's great with Argentine tango, and like waltz can be very meditative, but you know, sometimes you want to contribute to the situation. West Coast Swing's great for that. So
I literally was thinking earlier, I went and watched one of my previous videos, and I was literally thinking of how I am always thinking about like 5 things at once constantly when I'm following.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Share the screen share. I think that's just, I'm gonna put a bookmark because I think that's just the thumbnail for the replay right there.
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, we've already got some great call and response going. So Maxime struck this like gloriously enthusiastic pose.
Power pose.
And Brandi's like, okay, I'll strike a pose. And then they end up quasi mirroring each other through this part of the music.
Although Brandi is less enthusiastic about it.
True. But I don't know. I think it would be more jarring if Brandi were to suddenly be as excited as Maxime is right now. Yeah.
Which is a good thing to point out because just because you're doing a call and response or a mirroring doesn't mean you have to do it the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. What? Did I miss something?
Just Maxime's face as he was walking forward. Aaron said Maxime is the puppy like I am 90% of the time, and Brandi is the cat who puts up with his shit for 3 minutes. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That's fair.
That's beautiful.
So I want to point out right here that we already have a little bit of like call and response because Brandi starts with some like really small walks. And as she's going past Maxime, he follows through with that and catches on as he moves forward.
You're so right about that face.
Yep.
This entire dance is just a masterclass in call and response because they both react and respond to what the other is doing so quickly and sometimes so subtly. I think this particular one that you just pointed out, I had missed.
Yeah, it's interesting because Maxime is very much prepping for everything that he wants her to, do a response or mirror with him.
Mhm. I love this moment so much. So this is kind of like a call and response turned on its head, where he's like, "Oh, do this," and then he's like, "Wait, no,
Just
I'm going to
kidding.
respond to this."
My turn first.
Turn.
And I love that Brandi's like, "Oh, okay. I'm just standing here. I'll wait."
And it's her turn.
I think that's a really fantastic way of creating call and response that's very clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we go back and see how he actually created this. So he uses his left hand to just add that little bit of extra stopping power. Because without that, Brandi probably would have started following through on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
And having that hand there helps her know that he'd like her to stay there for a second. And then he holds that position while he starts taking just a little bit further of a step with his right foot for his own turn, so he's not too close to her. And then he lets go of her shoulder and rotates his hand in hers into a more follow position. And then it's okay, this is just a side note. It's really funny as a follow dominant who also leads really well, when a leader puts themselves into a one-footed spin when I'm following, and then they don't let me help them. I'm like, I could facilitate this situation. But you can see how Maxime is trying to make sure he's not actually throwing off Brandi's frame by keeping his hand like right above his head for that first turn, and it's not actually orbiting around his head, because that would force her frame to move.
Yeah.
And so it's really great when you want to make sure you're still leading to do that, and then you're in control. If you were to start forcing it to orbit, that would make your follow need to start having the leader role, which if you have someone who leads a lot, that's fine. I always like, I can help. It's fine. It's just something to be aware of.
Basically, he isn't putting her in the situation where she has to do anything. So his arm and hand, like, it's connected to her, but essentially it's disconnected from the rest of what he's doing. He's really powering through it with that lunge prep. And he's basically using the principle of like pirouettes when you do like in any type of solo dancing. It's the same thing, except he's just being connected, because you can see he's placing his hand in a way that like he doesn't need anything from her, and it's just there in order to keep her hand there because he wants her to go next.
And then he switches to a handshake hold with that right hand, makes eye contact again with his very excited face. And then I appreciate how he uses the extra guidance of his hand on her forearm again. How he unhinged his jaw. Well
that
done,
progression of happiness.
I
know. Erin said he's my spirit animal.
I adore him so much. Let's watch that again.
That's great.
This is actually a really good example of a leader that is slightly shorter than their follow, leading a one-footed turn. So because he's having to raise his right hand so far above where his own shoulder is, it's much harder to create power just from the shoulder muscles to pulse a one-footed turn. So you can see how he's really engaging some side to side motion through his whole body and like using his obliques. So he's actually using his abdominals to help power that lead, just because the angle between his hand and his right shoulder is not great for just using the shoulder muscles. So this is a kind of like an on your own call and response. So this is already harkening back to how he started the dance with a strong split weight pose.
That power pose.
That power pose. And then this is Brandi responding. It's like, I can do power pose too. Plus hips and smize. And then Maxime appropriately worships this situation. I think that's the verb to use.
Sure, yeah. Tori's face in the background, though. It's great.
Where is she?
She's like right on the end.
Oh, there she is.
More skeptical.
She's like, excuse me, husband. Were they married in 2017?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
It was impending, at least, if they weren't already.
But what I love about this is that he does really take that moment, and while it does look like he's kind of ignoring Brandi, he knows exactly where she's at and can sense her coming around him. Excuse me, apparently I'm losing my voice. But can like sense her coming around him, and then immediately allows her to like take that presence and kind of take it away from him in a sense, because of the way that she steps right in front of him.
And then I also appreciate how they both let this moment, once Brandi's in front of him, they don't try to escape this moment anytime soon, because they're here for a prolonged amount of time, and they're just letting the music dictate how long they stay here and kind of escalate this moment.
Erin said I was just watching Tori's jaw drop. And another thing is they kind of have like chosen together the way that they want to, how do I put it? Like the way that they want to interpret the music, like as very, I don't want to say upbeat because the music is upbeat, but like you could, you know, be a little bit different in the way that you're projecting your energy, if that makes sense. Like, because Maxime really started out with a lot of energy and forward projection, Brandi picked up on that and equally is using that. And not that she doesn't normally, but he's giving her extra opportunity for it, and she's taking like full whatever word I want to use. I don't know. I'm tired apparently.
Because if you just listen to this song, another choice you could make is to almost treat it like a blues song because of the speed, and have a really footwork heavy dance with your partner, which would also be like an appropriate choice to this song. Like I could see Parker and Melissa doing that, having a grand old time. But I love how they kind of take the flavor of the most narcissistic boy band era. Like, yes, look at me. And they also bring across like the nostalgia of this kind of song with the way they're dancing it. his happiness is just so
I know.
contagious.
It's a lot.
So wonderful. So there was a moment because did you hear my cat squeak?
No, I didn't.
Okay, she's next to me, curled up so hard that she's kind of snoring. And her ear is twitching. I think she's dreaming right now.
Yeah.
And it's really cute. Anyways, so the way Brandi walked around Maxime, we get to have more of that throughout this dance. So like right here, they're walking around each other. So even though it's not the exact same thing, it's still a minor callback to what had happened before. And like we've talked about on past episodes with musicality, it's often the simplest way to do it is to bring back the same elements just in a slightly different way and a slightly more escalated way as you progress through a song. Oh, I love this moment. So because it's a really great result of being that in tune with your partner, to be able to do call and response so quickly, you start to almost get in your partner's head and vice versa.
Yeah.
That these moments where they're like calling and responding to each other at the same time and end up doing the same thing pretty much. Oh, that face.
I know.
So good. These things become possible because of the partnering they have done up until this moment. We're going to go through that one more time because that's just delightful.
And it's something that I know I've touched on previously, but for leads, like if you're wanting to set up a call and response of some sort, you need to make sure you're managing your follows weight well, because that does facilitate very easily, mirroring and kind of going at the same time.
God, his shag roots are just like so obvious. Like his head barely goes anywhere.
Yeah.
As he switches his feet out underneath him here.
Yeah, it's the upper body entirely is staying in the same spot.
Yep. Satisfying.
Yeah. And that's something that he's able to do because he is choosing to not ground himself at that moment. He doesn't need to be grounded because he knows that Brandi is fine on her own for that moment. Like she's already settled. She's not really going anywhere. And so he can take that opportunity to unground himself and then, do a lot of footwork. Or not necessarily a lot of footwork, but there's a drastic like shift in where they're placed.
I think the song is officially stuck in my head now.
Yeah. I should add that that particular footwork that they just did is something that you should probably know. At least some version of it.
Yeah, it started with a click clack, right?
So,
all right, let me get right to the anchor. First of all, I love Brandi's hook across anchor right there. It's lovely.
Yeah.
So, click clack. And Maxime is demonstrating this really well with this extreme turnout to the right before he swivels to the left. And encouraging a follow to come in at that angle. So like if Brandi were mirroring him with her left foot, that requires a lot of fine tuning in the connection. I remember once I was dancing with Austin Coyce and he didn't get to me to do it the first time, he's like, just tiny little bit fussiness. And then he tried it again, because I'm just like a larger person with a much wider frame than he has. He just made the lead much wider, and I felt it instantly, and I was able to mirror him through it. But see, now they're both mirroring each other. And I love how he exits it. It's a unique exit to suddenly turn it into a pass instead of just finishing with a push.
Mm-hmm. That ronde around is something that you will see a lot for like a blues styling, but you'll see it where the free foot, the ankle is more attached to the ankle of the standing foot. So it makes like almost a diamond-y shape.
Mm-hmm. Then I want to really highlight really quickly where their inside feet go before that ronde. So they're both crossing in front and past themselves for there to be more room in between for that ronde. If you've ever had your ankle taken out on a ronde, it's probably because one or both of you did not step away first. It's a very important detail.
And doing that also allows them to add some extra rotation in so that they can get like a really nice whip around for it.
Yeah, because like, look at this contra body that they've both got going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially with Maxime, like he's got almost a 90-degree rotational difference between his shoulders and his hips.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have another moment of walking around from a whip entrance, and Maxime doing some just, I don't know, classic boy band hair combing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we'll call
it. That works.
And then we go back into a click clack.
Mm-hmm.
But this one has a more traditional push exit where they're not trading places. And then it goes into a rock and go.
I want to point out for a second just how far back Maxime was past his feet.
Right here.
Yep.
Yeah, he's really sitting into that.
Mm-hmm. However, because of the way that he has that left leg really well bent, it's not as much as you would think. That he's not like, he doesn't have enough like momentum there to pull her forward because she's not super settled where she is. So he wouldn't want to like really commit.
Mm-hmm. And then this is also a rock and go moment. So he's trying to counterbalance. You can watch the excellent center counterpoint of their handhold. It's only raising in elevation, but it's not traveling towards either one of them. Instead, Maxime is sending his whole body away, and Brandi is sending more of her hips away.
Yeah, you can kind of see the way that Brandi is like rocking back into that. You can kind of see the like diagonal from where her shoulder is to where his hips settle back.
Oh, yeah.
To make it nice and even because she is a little bit taller than him. and she is holding herself up fairly high in that particular moment.
Yeah. And then I want to highlight how when Maxime brings her forward, draws her left side forward and through, the handhold is actually lifting. It's very slight, but it's about, I don't know, I'd say an inch or two. And that allows Brandi to feel a lead forward instead of down along that line. Because if Maxime were to continue to lead down, Brandi would have a very difficult time breaking herself, especially with her toe leads, because that would drive her weight forward and down in an awkward way that's harder to break than if you're using heel leads. But because Maxime is bringing her forward while also lifting the hand, that allows her to feel a lead straight forward. It makes it really comfortable.
And
then here we are, they're walking around each other again. So this is what, the fourth time that there's been that kind of element.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that Brandi also added in a little bit of a shimmy, which Maxime did earlier.
Yeah. I really love the particular detail of the way she shimmies. Because it's not just forward and back, it's also a little bit up and down, like a bit of a shrug, but while still keeping her neck long.
Yeah.
And that's a gorgeous feminine detail that I love.
And I think the reason she chooses to do it that way here in particular is because of the way that they're connected arm to arm in kind of an open, like side to side position. And that's helping her stay connected by not doing too much forward and back movement.
Yeah. He's got
That'll
a really
disrupt.
firm hook under her shoulder blade with his fingertips. Now we have a third click clack, but this time, because Brandi has now gotten used to them doing click clacks in this dance, Maxime's able to do I would call this like a Kyle variation, where he changes the handhold in a very sneaky way. He makes that look so easy. Those leading barrel rolls at home, no, it's not that easy. All right, here we go. We've got another moment of strike a pose. Now I really want to see Maxime dance to Madonna. Do you think he would be just as excited? I like to think so.
Possibly.
So that was the kind of call and response that wasn't necessarily like one of them doing something and the other responding in the moment. That was a response to something that came earlier in the song.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that we've specifically said, but there are multiple ways that you can use call and response. And it's not always just one partner does something, the other partner does it next. I know we've obviously been explaining that this whole time, but thought I should just like actually say that.
Yeah, because you can call and response throughout the song to stuff that came earlier and build from there. And so like here, we're not only responding to the strong poses from earlier, but also to the walking around each other. Because like there's been 2 moments where Brandi has gotten to walk around Maxime. He's like, it's my turn.
And that's one really great way to use call and response is if your partner does something and you don't pick up on it right at the appropriate time, the next time that there is something repetitive in the music, then you do it. So it's call and response still, but it's a little bit more extended.
Yeah, a little bit more delayed. And for leaders who have the tendency to immediately almost mimic what your follow just did, it would often be better to just wait until the next similar moment in the music and then try to do it. And then that will feel a little bit more conscious and purposeful, as opposed to just randomly mirroring your partner. Because there are obviously moments when just suddenly mirroring your partner right after they did the thing, like there are moments where that's appropriate, but it's better to kind of like think about it a little bit more critically, because you want what you do to add to the dance, not just repeat what we just saw. There needs to be either an escalation or a slight variation, because like I said, this is what the however many millionth time they're walking around each other, either together or just one of them doing it in this dance. And if they did it the exact same way each time, we would be like, oh man, move on. But because they've done it now like 4 to 8 different ways, it's very dynamic. Like I challenge people to go back and watch this and count how many times they walk around each other.
I love that we have like exact matching angles.
That's excellent. So I want to highlight, because this might be an unfortunate freeze frame for Maxime, but by him really exaggerating the prep for this ball change, it makes it a lot easier for Brandi to catch on. If we go to the next one and come down, his prep right here isn't as extreme as it was on that first one, because Brandi's already on the same page. And it can become more subtle. But if he hadn't exaggerated it for that first one, it would have probably taken Brandi at another one to catch on.
Yeah. And the other thing with that is that you can see that he's really exaggerating what he does with the movement, but also with his face. Like you can see that he's like, okay, something's going to happen. And that tends to be, a good cue for your follow to, pay attention, because something will be happening that maybe is not just lead and follow in terms of like connection.
Also, extra points to the camera person for panning so well through that. That was lovely. Was not jarring to slow-mo through at all. And we strike one last pose. And Brandi just kills it.
I love that as the dance went along, Brandi especially kind of got more into it and was having more fun with what she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because Maxime did start out pretty excited at the beginning, but Brandi didn't necessarily. And, I think that is, part of call and response. Like, she was adjusting to his energy. And I should add that he's giving her a lot of energy just in, like, emotionally and how he's presenting himself, but like it doesn't necessarily translate into how much momentum he's giving her.
Right. That is a
Because
very important
sometimes
distinction.
yeah. Because like if I have a partner that's like really excited and that just translates in them looking like they're having a great time, then I will probably end up, also looking like I'm having a great time. But if I have a partner that is excited and that gets translated into a lot of extra momentum for me, then I'm just going to be focused on not dying.
Right.
So
Yeah.
2 different ways that you can have that.
Yeah.
It's kind of important distinction.
And then another thing to think about, like if you're ever in a spotlight situation, if you notice right off the bat that your partner is just over the moon excited about the song, let them love it.
Mm-hmm.
And just be there to support them.
Yeah.
And then that excitement will bleed into you, even if you don't necessarily like the song. You'll be like, oh, this person is having the time of their life. How can I add to that for them?
Mm-hmm.
And I know, what if you're excited 90% of the time? That's what happens like when we watch some of our favorite champions, but like both of them tend to be like A-list performers, and you can sometimes see them like headbutting with who wants to dominate the performance, right? Like sometimes they mesh and they blend beautifully, but sometimes you can tell they're not on the same page about balancing out their performance styles, and that's when we can get some more uncomfortable dances. So making sure you're being present enough to be aware of where your partner's at, so that way you can complement it and add to it instead of creating an obstacle for it, or trying to overpower them. That's like a really important skill to have. Because like there are some times when I see certain like random Jack and Jills happen, and I know partner A is like the master of phrasing, but then you have partner B and they're not as skilled at that, and they're not letting their partner carry them there. They're trying to do it all on their own, and that creates dissonance in the partnership. So being aware of your partner's strengths can be really helpful for you. It's like, oh, this person's really good at this. I don't have to worry about that. I just need to support them and allow them to do that thing they're really good at. It's like, if you're ever leading me and you don't give me the space to do a high kick on a break, what's wrong with you? That kind of stuff, right? So yeah. But I also really love this dance and how Brandi has a trying to think of like a good descriptor, because they're different in how excited they were. Like, yes, she was as excited, but she didn't present it. She was more calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
And she wasn't trying to make herself like campy excited, kind of in the way Maxime was, because that would have been inauthentic to her as well.
Yeah.
And so both of them staying in their wheelhouse was really powerful, especially since they were paying such incredible attention to each other. And yeah, that dance was basically walking around each other in power poses.
Yeah.
That was basically what it is. And it was a first place champions Boogie by the Bay, Jack and Jill.
Yep.
So that's the power of call and response done well.
Yeah.
You don't need a bunch of fancy patterns. You
It's
need well chosen phrasing and call and response. So
yes. Brandi is really great at paying attention to her partner and making sure that she isn't overpowering them, because there are times that you can see where she does add quite a bit of her own, styling into what she's doing. And there's times that she realizes that, her lead isn't paying as much attention to what she's doing. So then she just kind of dials it down and, just allows herself to enjoy the dance in a different way, than her trying to fit things in for herself.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, Aaron asks, how do you improve paying attention? That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
So part A is to improve your mindfulness in every other area of your life. Because if you're just trying to improve it in your dancing, it's not going to be as effective. You need to start incorporating mindfulness into your life in general, which is, if you want some life coaching, I got a different business for that. But Accountability Muse, go check it out. Anyways, I think part of being able to pay better attention to your partner on the dance floor is having the patience to have space in between something happening so you can respond to it in a proactive way instead of just reacting to it.
Mm-hmm.
And getting comfortable with waiting and patience and letting things just breathe can be deeply uncomfortable when you're not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey, yeah, Aaron says, so like being okay with the awkward silences. Bingo, you read my mind.
Yep. That is basically the golden rule for like improving the way that you are, paying attention to your partner, is just like being okay with completely stopping what you're doing. Because otherwise, like, you don't have that space to figure out what they're doing first and then what you're doing next based on what they're doing. If you continue moving, like, you can't figure out what's going on before you respond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't respond at the same time.
Yeah.
It
And
doesn't
like
work.
the more skilled you get, the more your body has muscle memory, and it doesn't have to necessarily go through your conscious mind anymore. You've just drilled a certain response to a certain situation into your body so much that it happens faster without you having to think about it. And that just comes with time and effort and practice and getting really conscious about what your choices are.
Yeah.
So that way you don't have to necessarily make those choices in the moment. You've like made them in advance while you're practicing. And you're like, okay, if X happens, I will do Y. And you've already made that decision while you're practicing. So when it happens on the dance floor or on the comp floor, you already know what you've decided and you can just do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that one really good way to like improve the way that you're responding to your partner is to have more control over your own body and like the movements that you're doing with that, because then it is far easier to adjust. Like if you already have everything fine-tuned where you can switch your weight like that, it's going to be easier for you to adjust to your partner.
Mm-hmm. And then another element is the level of performance, because there are plenty of things that happen in champions dances, for example, that maybe go over a lot of people's heads because they don't know what they're looking at. And the partners just covered it so well with how they handled it in their faces that we thought nothing went wrong. So what may feel awkward to you may look fine, but if you make it in your face, we can tell you feel awkward. Suddenly the movement will also look awkward, even if it wouldn't have without that expression.
Yeah. It's like if you have heard people saying that there's no mistakes. And I fully agree with that, apart from injuring your partner.
Yes.
That's a mistake. Don't do that.
Injury, no bueno. We don't do that.
But other than that.
Aaron asks, now on the flip side, what if they're not giving you something to work with? Oh, let me make it bigger so I can read the whole comment. Like if the expectation is just pattern. Oh, I'll let you go with that one first.
I mean, I think that it depends on what you mean. If you mean like that they're not giving you any like styling inspiration or like adjusting to what you're doing, then I feel like just go with it, you know? Like if you can tell that they're expecting patterns, go with it. Just give them patterns. Like that's, I feel like, the best way to go about things. If you can tell that your partner is expecting something from you, go with it. It's going to make things easier.
Yeah. And then you can always, if you're a leader, you can always add moments of extending an anchor with just a little bit of like your own styling, and that might encourage them to respond to you. So you're the one giving the call and they're the one responding. But if you try it like 1 or 2 times in the first phrase and a half of a dance and they're not responsive, don't continue doing it.
Yeah. It's always just best to, go with what you think is going to go over.
Yeah.
I feel like generally you can kind of tell what your partner is expecting in the first, few 8 counts of a dance. And I think that it's best to not try to force something other than that.
Right. There are so many different mindsets and tool sets you can take into a dance to handle different situations. So like another one that comes to mind is just figuring out what your partner's A game is and bringing that out of them. And you can do that from either role. It's harder to do from the follower's role.
But you can.
But you can. And for example, if you're a leader and you're dancing with a follow in like a novice, Jack and Jill, for example, and you figure out that maybe like their A game is just a double outside turn from a whip, you save that for the point in the music where it will have the most impact. And you keep everything else simpler. So that way, when you finally build up to that whip with a double outside turn, it's like, oh, whip with a double outside turn. Yes. And that's understanding that contrast and knowing what your partner is capable of and bringing that out of them. That's how they feel amazing. Like, personally, as a leader, like, yeah, I know a fair amount of patterns, but do I dance all of them that I know? No. I lead like 5 things, and I often forget left side passes. It's hilarious. You can bear witness to this, Alicia. I often say, oh, I forgot left side pass. Here, let's do one. I am a dork. But just by strategically creating contrast from basic patterns, like I said, the dance we just analyzed was basically them walking around each other, a few click clacks, and power poses. Like, that's really simple, but can be so powerful.
Yeah. To kind of go off of that, I know that personally, like, I always have 2 mindsets that I can go to when I'm dancing with someone. One is like trying to figure out what they're doing and what they're wanting from me, and the other is trying to figure out what I can help create. And I think part of that depends on like the level of dancer that I'm dancing with, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think that I will go with one or the other depending on how much my partner wants to work with me. So
yeah, it's all about, you're a team, and you have the opportunity to create something together. And what's really cool in West Coast Swing is it doesn't matter how varied in levels you are, you get to create something unique together. So for those leaders who feel bad because they're newer and all they can lead is basics, to us more advanced follows, we love that, because if you're willing to let us play with it, we'll have an amazing dance together. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. Like
Yeah.
more often than not, I would rather dance well done basics that I can play with than with a leader who knows more patterns and thinks they're the shit. Because usually I don't feel like I'm a person. I feel like I'm just an object on the end of their hands. I would rather have a conversation with my partner and dance together than be dictated to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which I feel like goes along with what I always say, which is if you start out learning good technique, then you will start out having good dances.
Yep.
It's just my personal opinion.
Yep. Agreed.
But, you know, I think that is from my own experience. Like if I dance with a new dancer that does have some solid technique, I can do whatever I want. And I can help them do something different that they wouldn't know how to do on their own.
Yep.
So I personally enjoy that, but
yeah,
technique.
it's always fun. And then what's interesting is when you have the opportunity to do that as a higher level follow for a lower level leader, is they often think that was all because of the follow. And like, yes, we're bringing a lot to the table, but the leader created the space and the opportunity for it.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking like, I think that's one of the reasons why follows love following me so much is my technique is solid. I'm safe to connect heavily with. And I create the time and the space for them to play. And then also because I'm a follow first, I know what follows want to do. So I know what kind of time and space to create for the stuff that they want to do.
Yeah.
And really that's all I do. And I'm really popular. It's not rocket science.
True.
Next week, we are going to be analyzing one of my favorite spotlights ever, Kyle and Sarah from the John Invitational. I think it's 2016 or 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew knows what I'm talking about. When it's actually still to this day the video I share with people if they've never heard of West Coast Swing before, because it has both blues, more contemporary hip hop, and yeah, it just kind of like is the epitome of what West Coast Swing can be these days for me, and I love sharing it. So that's what we're going to be looking at next week, just nerding out about things that we love. I'll be as excited as Maxime was in that dance. Great. Yeah, and we're still in the process of wrangling our fun-sized leaders into a time and a date. It's probably going to be at the end of March. It will be on a Saturday, probably. Just FYI. So yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. It was a joy as always. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
God.
Let's just watch part of it.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this event. Great. I'm so sad.
Oh gosh.
Why do we feel the need to deeply squat? I don't understand. Well, the video that I sent Cassie previous also had that.
There was a lot of deep squatting. If a leader ever did that to me, I would just slowly shake my head at them.
No, thank you.
My knees hurt just from seeing that.
There was an attempt. All right, shall we proceed with the more official shenanigans? Okay, let me switch to pay-per-view.
I love how he spins himself first, and Brandy's like, oh.
Can you sense movement?
I can, yes, see Parker and Jordan in the background. Throwing money.
That isn't. Wow. I swear I drew a circle. It did not believe me. These two
Great
gentlemen.
circle.
That's better. But let's see.
That's self-promo.
I'm getting better. It only feels 95% gross now instead of 100% gross. So that's an improvement. May or may not be because I've just become more effective at dissociating when I do it. I'm doing something right because my clients make my freaking day. I'm like, you're paying to talk to me. I'm having the time of my life helping you. So, yes. Anyways,